The deep silence of space was broken only by the distant hum of solar winds and the flickering lights of distant stars. In the heart of the Solarian sector, where mighty alien fleets patrolled the void, something unexpected happened. A massive shadow emerged from the darkness, an unknown warship, unlike anything seen before. It was black as the void itself, its smooth metallic surface reflecting no light, giving it an eerie presence. It moved slowly but with purpose, cutting through space like a ghostly reaper. The Exilarian patrol ships detected it first. Commander Veckler, a seasoned warrior with decades of experience, stared at his scanners in disbelief. The ship was huge, far larger than any known battleship in the galaxy. More disturbing was the fact that it had no identification signals, no markings, and no attempts at communication. It simply appeared, as if from nowhere. "Send a transmission," Veckler ordered. His crew obeyed instantly, sending multiple signals in different languages, asking for identification, demanding a response. But the warship remained silent. It did not react, did not acknowledge them. It just kept moving. Panic spread among the fleet. Was this some new experimental weapon? A rogue AI? A lost relic from a forgotten empire? Veckler's instincts screamed at him. This was something else. Something far older. Something dangerous. Then, the ship passed by one of the smaller Exilarian cruisers. For a moment, the entire ship flickered. The cruiser's power systems blinked out for 3 seconds. Weapons, shields, life support, everything shut down in an instant before returning. "Commander," a technician shouted. "That ship, it just disrupted our systems, without firing a shot." Veckler clenched his jaw. That was impossible. No known technology could disable an entire warship just by being near it. And yet this unknown vessel had done exactly that. Fear began to creep into the hearts of the Solarian soldiers. What kind of ship was this? On the bridge of the unknown warship, deep within the cold silence, something watched. Humanity had returned. For centuries, the galaxy had forgotten them, ignored them, assumed they were weak, unworthy of mention in the grand histories of war and conquest. They were wrong. The ship continued forward, scanning, analyzing, observing. The galaxy had become arrogant in humanity's absence. They had grown soft, comfortable in their belief that they were untouchable. But now, something far older had come back to the stars. And soon, the galaxy would understand the meaning of fear. The warship gave no warning, no explanation. It had no need to. It had already decided. The stars would tremble. The Exilarian fleet remained frozen in place, their ships drifting uneasily as the massive, unidentified warship passed through their sector. Its presence alone sent waves of unease through every officer aboard the command ship. Commander Veckler clenched his claws, his mind racing. The ship had moved without hostility, yet its very existence felt like a threat. A shadow cast over the Exilarian domain. "Commander, our long-range scans confirm it," one of the officers stammered, his voice laced with disbelief. "That ship is human." Silence fell upon the bridge. The very word sent a chill through the Exilarian crew. "Impossible," Veckler hissed. "Humanity is extinct. The last of them disappeared from the galactic stage over 2 centuries ago. There hasn't been a single recorded sighting of their kind in generations." And yet, the officer gestured to the screen, where the warship continued its slow advance. "It bears their technological signature, their unique alloy compositions, their energy configurations. Commander, this is a human warship." Veckler's mind raced. The humans were legends of the past, spoken of in hushed whispers, remembered only in the cautionary tales told to young warriors. They had once been a rising force, a species that defied the natural order, challenging far older empires with nothing but sheer will and rage. And then, they vanished. No one knew why. Some said they had destroyed themselves in a final war. Others believed they had fled, retreating into the abyss of deep space, never to return. But now one of their warships was here. "Commander," another officer spoke up, urgency in their tone. "They're changing course. They're heading toward the Central Defense Station." Vekler's spines stiffened. The station was the heart of the Xelarian sector's security network, a heavily fortified base that controlled automated turrets, drone fleets, and planetary defense grids. If the humans were hostile, if they intended to make a move, that was the place to strike. "Order all ships into formation," Vekler barked. "We will not let them." A sudden jolt ran through the ship. The lights flickered, systems surged, and every display screen turned to static. The bridge filled with startled cries as officers scrambled to regain control. "Report," Vekler roared. "Commander," a panicked technician called out. "All of our ships, our entire fleet, our weapons, shields, they're offline." Vekler's breath caught in his throat. Every Xelarian warship in the sector was dead in the water. Their shields had collapsed, their weapons were unresponsive, and their engines refused to ignite. They were floating, helpless, vulnerable. And still, the human warship said nothing. No threats, no demands, no declaration of war. Just silence. And then, as if it had never been there, the warship simply vanished. One moment, it loomed in the darkness, and the next, gone. No jump signature, no trace, as if it had been a specter in the void. The Xelarian fleet slowly powered back up, their systems recovering in fragments. The crew panted in fear, their hearts pounding in their chests. Vekler slumped into his command chair, his mind spiraling. The humans had not attacked. They had not fired a single shot. Yet they had crippled his entire fleet without effort. And if they could do that in an instant, what would happen when they decided to strike? The Xelarian High Command was in chaos. Reports of the human warship's silent incursion had spread across the Empire like wildfire, igniting a storm of fear and speculation. No one could understand how the humans had returned, nor how their ship had disabled an entire fleet without a single shot. Theories swirled. Was it a rogue remnant of their once feared military? A lost vessel that had drifted through time? Or worse, had humanity been watching from the shadows all along, waiting for the right moment to reappear? Commander Vekler sat in the war chamber of the Grand Council, his claws gripping the stone armrests of his seat. Across from him, the most powerful figures in the Xelarian Empire sat in uneasy silence, their eyes fixed on the holographic display above them. There, frozen in time, was the image of that warship, its sleek, angular hull, its midnight black plating that seemed to absorb the light around it. There was no insignia, no markings to claim allegiance, just the undeniable presence of something ancient and terrifying. "This cannot be," one of the council members muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Humanity was erased from the galactic stage over 200 cycles ago. This is impossible. And yet it happened. Another member snapped, his mandibles clicking in frustration. Our fleets were paralyzed in mere moments. If they had attacked, if they had chosen to strike, there would be nothing left of our forces. Then why didn't they? Vekler spoke for the first time since the meeting began. His voice was low, steady, but his mind was anything but calm. If they possessed such power, why did they spare us? No one had an answer. The silence dragged on, heavy and suffocating. Then, Grand Marshal Zikath, the highest-ranking military official of the Empire, leaned forward, his gaze sharp as a blade. "There is only one reason a predator does not kill his prey immediately," he growled. "Because it is watching, studying, preparing to strike when the time is right." A chill ran through the chamber. "If humanity has returned," Zikath continued, "then we must assume they have been rebuilding in secret, advancing their technology beyond anything we can comprehend. Their silence is not mercy, it is calculation. We are being tested, measured, and when they decide to act, it will be too late for us to stop them." Vekler exhaled slowly. The thought was terrifying, but it made sense. The humans had always been unpredictable. Long ago, when they first entered the galactic stage, they had started as nothing, just another primitive species among thousands, struggling to survive. But unlike others, they had adapted fast. They had learned from their enemies, stolen technology, improved upon it, and overcome every challenge placed in front of them. They never fought fair, never followed the accepted rules of war, and they never, ever forgot a threat. "Are we certain this is the only ship?" Another council member asked hesitantly. "Perhaps it is an anomaly, a relic from the past that somehow survived." "No," Vekler said immediately. His instincts screamed otherwise. "No empire sends only one warship into enemy space unless they are certain it is enough." Zekath nodded grimly. "Then we must prepare for war." The words settled over the chamber like a death sentence. War against humans. The very idea made the council members shift uneasily in their seats. The last species that had tried to exterminate humanity, the ancient Car Dominion, had been wiped from existence. Their homeworlds burned, their fleets shattered, their legacy erased. The galaxy had assumed that war had ended with humanity's disappearance. But if the humans were back, Vekler could see the same fear in everyone's eyes. No one wanted this war, but they had no choice. "What are our next steps?" someone asked. "The fleet must be reinforced," Zekath said. "New weapons, stronger defenses, countermeasures against whatever technology they have developed. And if that is not enough, then we pray," Zekath murmured, "for a species that did not believe in mercy." The Exilarian Empire wasted no time. The High Command sent orders across their vast territory, mobilizing fleets, fortifying key star systems, and recalling every available warship to defend their core worlds. The galaxy had not seen such a large-scale military movement in centuries. Yet beneath the surface of their war preparations, there was one undeniable truth. They were afraid. The memory of humanity's old war lingered like a nightmare, a ghost that refused to fade. The last time the galaxy had challenged them, entire civilizations had been erased from existence. The Car Dominion had been the strongest military power at the time, boasting fleets so large they could blot out the stars. And yet, the humans had brought them to their knees, not through sheer numbers, but through their terrifying unpredictability. Now, that same enemy had returned, and worse, they had returned in silence. Commander Vekler stood on the bridge of the Xelarian warship Doomfang, staring at the holographic tactical map. The human warship had not moved. It remained at the edge of the system, a dark shape against the void. It had not responded to hails, had not engaged with their scouts, had not shown any aggression. And yet, its presence alone had thrown the Empire into a state of chaos. "Any response from the ship?" Vekler asked his communications officer. "None, Commander," the officer replied, his voice tense. "They are ignoring all signals." Vekler's claws drummed against the metal railing. "What do the scans show?" "Same as before," another officer said. "The ship's energy readings are strange. It's unlike anything we've seen before. There's power there, but it's contained, controlled, like it's waiting." "Waiting for what?" Vekler turned to his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Zelf. "What do you think?" Zelf hesitated. "If they wished to attack, they would have done so by now. I do not believe they are here to start a war, but I also do not believe they are here in peace." Vekler grunted. "Then what?" Zelf exhaled slowly. "They are sending a message." "A message? But what message?" Then, as if on cue, the human warship moved. It was subtle at first, a slow shift in its position, turning ever so slightly toward the Xelarian fleet. The movement was deliberate, controlled, like a predator locking eyes with its prey. The bridge of Doomfang fell into absolute silence. Every officer, every soldier, every crew member felt it. The humans had just acknowledged them. "Sir," a technician whispered, barely able to form the words. "They're charging something." Vekler's heart pounded. Shields up. Prepare all weapons. Before he could finish, the lights on the bridge flickered. Screens glitched, data streams cut out, and for a single moment, an eerie silence filled the ship. Then, the holographic display in front of them changed. A message appeared, a simple line of text, translated perfectly into their language. "We remember." Vekler's breath caught in his throat. The humans had not come for war. They had come for vengeance. Panic spread like wildfire through the Xilarian fleet. The simple message, "We remember," was enough to send shockwaves through every command center, every warship, and every officer who had studied humanity's history. There was no declaration of war, no ultimatum, no demands. Just those two words, carrying the weight of old grudges, of forgotten sins, of a past the Xilarians had hoped was buried. Commander Vekler gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stay calm. His claws dug into the metal railing of his command deck as his officers scrambled for answers. What did the humans remember? The war, the betrayals, the lies the Empire had woven to rewrite history. "They're moving again," a voice called out, pulling him back to the present. The human warship drifted forward, not at an aggressive speed, but with a deliberate slowness that sent a chill through the Xilarian officers. Every second that passed felt like a hammer pounding against their nerves. The warship wasn't just approaching. It was advancing with confidence. "Orders, sir," Sub-Commander Zelf asked, his voice unsteady. "Do we engage?" Vekler hesitated. Engaging was suicide. They all knew it. The reports from centuries ago described humanity's warships as nightmares of technology and strategy, their weapons not just destructive, but unpredictable. Their minds worked differently. They didn't fight fair. And worst of all, they didn't forget. "Not yet," Vekler muttered. "Open a channel." The communications officer obeyed instantly, sending a transmission toward the human warship. "Channel open, sir." Vekler took a breath before speaking. "This is Commander Vekler of the Xilarian fleet. State your intentions." Silence. Then, a response. A new message appeared on their holographic display. "We know what you did." A shiver ran through the bridge. Every officer's breath caught. "What does that mean?" Zelf whispered. Vekler's blood ran cold. He knew exactly what it meant. He had read the classified files. The true history of the war. The Empire had done more than just defeat humanity in battle. They had betrayed them. A secret alliance had been forged in the past, a promise between the Xilarian Empire and humanity, a pact meant to protect both species from an even greater threat lurking beyond the galactic borders. But when the Xilarians saw an opportunity to wipe out a potential rival, they turned on their human allies. They sabotaged their warships, cut off their supply lines, and left them to die against an overwhelming enemy. But humanity didn't die. Somehow, against all odds, they had survived. And now, they were here. Vekler's hands clenched into fists. If the humans truly knew the depths of the Empire's betrayal, then there was no negotiating, no diplomacy that could save them. They weren't here for politics. They were here to settle an old score. "Sir," the communications officer spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "We're detecting another energy surge from their ship." Vekler inhaled sharply. "Shields at maximum. All ships, hold formation." The human warship halted. For a moment, the entire Xilarian fleet held its breath. Then, without a single shot fired, without a single hostile maneuver, the human warship broadcasted its final message. "Justice is coming." Then the void itself seemed to shudder. The warship vanished. The Xilarian fleet stood frozen, their screens flickering in eerie silence. The human warship had disappeared as if it had never been there. But the last message still burned on every display. "Justice is coming." Commander Vekler clenched his jaw, his mind racing. This wasn't an empty threat. This was a warning. Humanity had no need for grand displays of power. Just a few words had shattered the nerves of every Xilarian officer in the fleet. "We need to leave," Sub-Commander Zelf said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Now, before they come back." Veckler didn't respond. He was staring at the star map, a cold realization sinking in. The humans hadn't fired a single shot, yet their mere presence had sent the fleet into disarray. And now, they were gone. Or so it seemed. "Scan the sector," he ordered. "I don't believe for a second they just left." The tactical officer obeyed, hands moving swiftly over the controls. A few moments passed before his expression twisted in confusion. "Sir, I'm detecting." "No, that can't be right." Veckler's patience thinned. "Spit it out." "There are ripples in space, like something moving in and out of phase. They didn't jump away. They're still here, just hiding." Veckler's stomach dropped. The humans were watching, studying, waiting. Then the proximity alarms wailed. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge. Multiple signatures inbound. An officer cried out, "They're here." Veckler snapped his head toward the display. His blood ran cold. Not one, not two, but dozens of human warships materializing out of the void. They had been there all along, cloaked, silent, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. The Xelarian fleet was surrounded. "Hail them," Veckler barked, gripping the edge of his command console. The communications officer was already working, but he shook his head, panicked. "They're not responding." Veckler's mind spun. This was a trap, a carefully orchestrated psychological attack. Humanity had given them time to flee, time to make a choice. But they had stayed. Now, the humans had returned, with reinforcements. A new transmission blinked onto the screen. But this time, it wasn't text. It was an image. Veckler's breath caught in his throat. It was a Xelarian warship, an old model, battle-scared and lifeless, floating in the void with a single human warship beside it. The wreckage was unmistakable. It was from the war centuries ago. And then the image changed. A grainy video feed flickered to life. An old Xelarian admiral, standing before a table, shaking hands with a human officer. The ancient peace treaty, the promise of alliance, proof of the betrayal. "By the stars," Zelf whispered. Veckler felt a hollow pit in his chest. This wasn't just about war. This was about the truth. The humans weren't just here for revenge. They wanted justice, and they wanted the entire galaxy to see what had been done to them. "Sir, they're sending another message," the comms officer murmured. "It's a countdown." The numbers began ticking down on every screen. 10, 9, 8. Veckler's mind screamed. They weren't going to fire immediately. They were giving them a choice. Surrender, or suffer the consequences. 7, 6. Zelf turned to him, desperate. "Sir, what do we do?" Veckler's claws tightened into his palms. There was only one answer. The countdown ticked lower, each second stretching into eternity. 5, 4. Commander Veckler's mind raced. His fleet was surrounded, their betrayal laid bare for the entire galaxy to see. The humans had planned this from the start. They had appeared in silence, sent their warning, then vanished only to return in overwhelming force. And now, they gave the Xelarians a choice. 3. "Surrender," Veckler said through gritted teeth. His officers stared at him in shock. "Sir, we still have firepower. We can fight." Zelf protested. Veckler's gaze hardened. "And how many of us will die before we fire a single shot? You saw what they did. They didn't attack. They didn't threaten. They exposed the truth. And now they are giving us a chance." 2. His claws hovered over the console. A single command, and he could open communications, send a full surrender signal. Would they even accept it? 1. Before he could act, the countdown vanished. The screens shifted. A single message appeared. "Good choice." The alarms silenced. The human warships remained in place, their weapons locked but unfired. Then, slowly, they turned away, one by one, slipping back into the void, disappearing as silently as they had come. They hadn't come for war. They had come for justice. And now, they had it. Vekler slumped back in his chair, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The weight of history bore down on him. The humans had just spared them, not out of mercy, but because they didn't need to fire a single shot to win. They had already won the moment they arrived. As the last human warship vanished into the darkness of space, one thought burned in Vekler's mind. The Solarians had feared humanity's weapons, but what they should have feared was their patience.